My name's Jake. I play guitar and sing.
My name is Matt. I play bass and don't sing.
My name is Eric. I also play guitar and sing.
We are Spaceface.
Hal would be a product of these two guys have known each other basically their whole lives. And then separately, I knew Jake for a while. Randomly, we played ice hockey down in Memphis, Tennessee, which is like kind of a strange thing, but a story that we always bring up. And so those guys always played music together, and it wasn't until we went to different high schools. They went to the same high school in college, so now 7 years ago, we kind of just started fooling around with the three of us, just writing stuff, and then
me and Eric had been burning each other's CDs, just kind of exchanging music, kind of filling in gaps of what you might have missed. And one day he took me to his house and he had an amp and a guitar, and I was like, well, you should just come over and start playing with Matt and I.
Yeah, I was bugging him. I was like, man, I really actually need to put this somewhere besides the room in my apartment. Maybe I could bring it over. And they're like, it's kind of crowded. And I was like, well, I'm going to bring it over, we'll jam, and I just left it there. And then
Matt and I kind of lived
houses later.
Yeah, we kind of lived in a party house freshman year in college. So there's just this one just terrible room that had all sorts of just gear and empty beer cans and cockroaches and what have you in it. But yeah, I think that happened, and then eventually it was well, I guess we should start playing some shows. So we just started booking them and going for it. We had 5 different names that we had been kicking around for a little bit. One of which was actually a different David Bowie reference, which was kind of funny. But I was on tour, and my stage manager was showing me his old band, and they were good. And I said, what happened? And he goes, I don't do my book and Spaceface and all that stuff. And it kind of I was like, Spaceface, I like the way that sounds. And I pitched it to them, and they were like, well, that sounds just dumb enough for us to go for. And it wasn't until 2 years later I was listening to Moon Age Daydream in my hotel room, and I sang the line, I went, press your space face close to mine. I went, oh my gosh! And I had to text them, and Eric was like, yeah, of course, you idiot.
That's funny. Yeah, we were too vain to try to think up of a cool, meaningful name for our band that it's does the name justify listening to it? Or, it's you have to make the music be, support the name to where, saying the name doesn't sound funny or ironic anymore. That makes sense.
We wanted something that had, sounded just goofy enough that we wouldn't have to take it too seriously, and just broad enough that you could make anything.
And also something that sounded like an in-your-face sort of psychedelic, spacey cosmic rock band.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious. Yeah, that was, so this is a product of the perfect kind of songwriting. There's some older songs that we all wrote together, some that Matt wrote. Matt's this is the core songwriting group. So Crazy Man was a song that I wrote sitting on the front porch of my house in a crappy key, didn't really know exactly what I was doing, and I like the song, the recording itself sounded very natural and stuff, and the lyrics were whatever, but the chord progression fit a the main bass line groove that goes to that song. And then it's funny when just naturally a lyric or something will fit on a groove or a verse or something like that, and then so that's how that song basically formed, which is sort of natural their riff over a song that I had just sort of forced into that formula.
I remember specifically a guy that was playing drums with us at the time. He was the only one that knew how to record, and it was there's this in Ableton, and he was messing with this drum thing that had this cool delay, and I was like, that's great, keep that, let's move on. And I remember specifically he just he's a sort of Chase the Dragon type dude. He's like, I'm trying to record the song, but this is what's happening right now. And I was like, dude,
Stop while it's good.
Stop while it's good. And then, yeah, and eventually, I think it all kind of came together when we really started playing more and more together.
Put some filter modulation effects onto it, and yeah, just make it sound like a squished bag or something.
Yeah, I think our best songs tend to come from like somebody's already written a song and Matt already has a riff, and you kind of like jam those two together.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, there's I'd say there's tremendous sound growth between the first songs that we recorded, and because I mean, just in the way that we were recording it, a lot of those were done either like from an iPad that we had in GarageBand is what I almost said. And us like trying to figure it out, which a lot of times you get really cool stuff out of that, but you know, a lot of these were done in Ardent Studios, which is a really professional studio in Memphis. And it's beautiful, and just learning that, but you kind of like have to get everything done really quick. However, the production aspect of Sun Kids, I think, is what made it shine, and that was Jake and Jared at Blackwatch in Norman, Oklahoma, and they did, I mean, like listening to the demo mixes and stuff like that from the studio, like I was like, God, I'm so tired of playing these songs. Some of them we've written when we were like 16, and then like you can go back and see what they're working on, and you're like, oh, that's a completely different song from even what we recorded, you know? And I think that's what kind of that's really what made it sound so much better. And you know, we've just been playing together, and we're not, you know, drug-addled kids anymore. We're just drug-addled semi-adults, so.
I think a lot of it's like a learning curve, too. Because honestly, you know, you can sit and mess around with each other and find out, like, what you think is cool, but I think what I like best about our band is it's an intensely collaborative process. It's very rare that you have one vision and it goes through all of whatever those filters are and then comes out the same. And like working with Jared specifically for the record, I used to tell people it would be kind of like similar to saying we came and we went with like ragu, and we were like, I want to make a really good spaghetti with this. And a guy like Jared, or like most engineers who do it all the time, is you just don't know what can be done until they tell you. And dudes like that will always come up to you and say, well, to make the best spaghetti, you have to grow the tomatoes in the right dirt. So there's this like, does that make sense? It'd be like, you take it all, it's like we'd done all this work, and then you take it to somebody and it's just like tear all of it down and just run it through so much different stuff and try to decide if it's really worth it. Is that a bad analogy?
Yeah. No, it's not a bad analogy, but
to make a spaghetti, you must first create the universe.
Yeah, there's like the songwriting and the production aspect that you grow from learning, right? And then the practice from playing over years, and like you really do see what works and what doesn't work, and you want to chase what works, like what you get a good reaction to. And then also like there's songs that we play, we don't play them anymore, but there's songs off the first EP, they're like, shit, man, why did I write it this way? I can't sing that high, you know? Like, so you like grow, you become a better musician as you go along, plus you become better also because you write in like the ways that you can, you know, that work better for you and as a band. So totally. it's like a total like full circle of like a production growth and like a personal like musicianal growth. I
mean, I think it sounds like you're pulling a lot of stuff from the SoundCloud, and I think if you just go right to our SoundCloud, you can trace the like us all just hanging out in the living room right up to like actually being in a studio and even tracking things separately and like actually taking time to do harmonies and whatnot. Whereas before I felt like it's loud, that's good, cool.
How fast can I play? Yeah. I want to know what I can do.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing, like, so as far as, you know, the amount of time that we spend writing the songs that are on the record and the amount of time we spend recording them and then the amount of time you spend producing them, so, like, they don't go way far off the rails when the production starts happening. I mean, you could break the whole thing down and they build it right back up, you know, from like a better baseline, but the process of recording takes place in like 3 days, you know, and then you record an entire record in 3 days, and then that's what you have to work with. So that was kind of like the crazy thing that happened. So, yeah.
So what I say a lot about this album, in America, like, it came out basically, and then Donald Trump got elected. And so I feel really weird about it sometimes because it's like such a happy-go-lucky album. And I think if we had known that was going to happen, it would have been way more like ominous. I don't know how to describe it. It would have been like, I don't know.
It feels weird. Well, we wrote it like at the height of, Bernie Sanders' popularity and whatnot, and you think like, yes, like the world's gonna change for good, like we're on the mend, and then all of a sudden it's these just insanely turbulent times, and you're like, I was
less of a triumph, more of a Band-Aid.
Yeah. I was happy because I feel like I've dreamt of putting out a record since I was 10.
Right.
And you finally do it, and you're just like, but then you're worried, because you don't want people in these trying times to think that you're just being like,
happy-go-lucky dude.
Don't worry about all that. Everything's great. We're just white dudes playing rock. What?
Some of the reviews were like, it's winter, all of this crazy shit's happening. Listen to this record and forget about it for a second. And I was like, that's the best takeaway that we can have, I think.
That has been actually like one of the most rewarding feelings, is people saying, like, specifically a few people have said, your record's gotten me through some hard times, or like the reviews saying, it's rough, just if you need a break, listen to this and you'll feel better. And it's like, at the end of the day, that's all you want to do when you're playing music too, is inspire people and make them feel good. So it was like you're worried, but then it ends up being like exactly what some people need, which has been kind of interesting.
Also, like, the anticipation of putting out the album, right? Like, we were all saying, like, as a musician, that's like the most exciting thing that, that you can chase, and that's what we're being a part of. But as far as like how it would be accepted, I always kind of have this sort of like, remember, how many albums have you anticipated coming out that you have bought like on the year that it came out? Like, usually, like, I'll find an artist and they have like 2-3 albums sometimes, and I'm like, oh wow, well, this is great because I can dive into all their stuff, so I always feel like the first year or so you hope is sort of maybe like a wash, and maybe like you want as many people to get behind it, but I always just hope that that it's going to be something that people can grow on and like discover at a store or something like that.
I think so. Early on, Eric came up with the idea of saying he wanted to do something that sounded earthy, and I don't know if he knew the impact that had on me, but I spent the next year just like field recording tons of stuff, like, and I think you guys did too. It ended up being like, there's like a party that we were at in Memphis, there's like kids outside, like playing on a playground outside of where I live, and I think there's like crabs walking on a beach too, and there's like water slapping the docks by where his little boat in Memphis, and just sort of started to put that in there. And with that idea, I think after all the songs and the cool like instrument sounds are there, you start to kind of like fade that in there, and so that stuff starts floating around, and then you start thinking like, well, what separates a cricket's buzz from this weird guitar part that's not in there? So you start just putting all these other sort of things that I think typically you would take out. We did this thing when we were recording that was basically whoever knew the least about the song had to go and do a take, having not known anything and like noodling around, and a lot of that ended up being cool stuff that's just sort of like floating from ear to ear in your headphones. And I know I listen to a lot of headphone music, so I knew from the get-go that we had to do something like that. Yeah. By the end of it, I'd be behind Jared, he'd be mixing, and I'd go, ooh, 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 what about? And he goes, do you want to pan it from the left speaker to the right? And I'd go, yeah. Like, but we'd do it, and it was fun. And a lot of those just weird parts that I think, when you're writing the song, you get so intent, like, no, that's the part. You can't play something that's out of rhythm or out of like not exactly in that key, but then I think a lot of that ended up being the most highlighted parts, which I think is what makes a lot of the poppier songs more psychedelic, because you have these weird effectsy guitars and keyboards that are like just hiding. My roommate said something that I really liked. She said, it sounds like you're making a record with the kind of sounds that you want to live in between. And I took that to heart. The next couple times we went and mixed it, I was like, let's do that. Speak more to that. No. No. Okay.
So there's a friends band of ours called Swim, and they, like, when they were asked in an interview one time, what are your biggest influences on music and stuff like that, they were like, I watch like a Paul Thomas Anderson movie and then I write something, and I was like, I wish I was that cool. But I think mostly like we do have like influences like that. We'll like go see a movie or read a book. I mean, Sun Kids, you know, the song stems from a book that Jake read, and so it's like, you know, you try to draw inspiration from things that aren't just music, because then you kind of feel cheap in a way. You're like, well, that's just the drum beat from that song. I'm pretending like it's not, but it totally is, you know. And but you know, you can draw inspiration from anything, really. I mean, even those sounds and stuff is like, yeah, I just like hanging out in the park and stuff.
We talk about that a lot, right?
Right.
It's like we'll often discuss like, and this is the part in the song where like you're at the party and you realize you need to go home because you're like too sad or something, or like this is like staring wistfully out on a beach. And, like, I remember Eric describing in great detail some sort of zoom out moment where somebody realizes how intensely small they are. I think we're pretty influenced by film.
It was never written, actually. We worked on it. It disappeared. I think about it every now and then. The Great Beyond song.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's a tune that literally is written to describe how I felt. It's described basically for me. It's like my selfish sort of like experience of can I say whatever? I took acid for the first time with my girlfriend at a festival called Hangout Fest, which is down in the in like the Gulf of Mexico, like Gulf shores, and we were able to play the festival, Hangout Festival, which was like a really awesome experience. So we were down there, and like this was like really, really honestly like pretty early on, like comparatively. And so there was
in our
like touring and stuff like that. And so this person had he was late and he wasn't gonna make it. So there was a slot that was open, and the Lips tour manager like contacted us and was like, hey, he like hooked it up somehow, and we had all of our stuff that we were about to set up, because the reason we were down there was to play an after party at this big beach house party, right? And we had all of our stuff there. Before we had taken our stuff up to the house, we got that call, and so we were like, this is why we're here. So we had this great sensation and like this great feeling of like playing to a couple thousand people, you know, and we, you know, it was like in a DJ room almost. And so people could have just left and hated it, but they stayed and they got into it. We went back, we played this party, and
stuff like this would be on our record that we would record.
I just had like a truly like magical time that night, and it was shared with all my friends who I love.
So
and then
you're leaving out though is that dude showed up and gave us a bunch of free acid.
Well, so I go, hey,
before we played.
I go,
that
hey,
show.
I'm gonna take acid, and he goes, what did you take? I said, well, like 5 minutes ago.
Right
and
before we're going on, I went,
about to
oh
play
my gosh.
But so like just that experience, and just so like months later, you just sort of like kind of reveling in the experience and everything, and you're just songwriting all the time, and just like the lyrically, it's very like kind of like loosely based off of like my mental state of that night. And
it's Evening View on the record.
It's track 4, if anyone cares to listen. But
think about taking acid on the Gulf Shores beach,
or any
for the
beach.
first time,
Any
or
beach will work, or any porch, or any hammock.
I guess that's the beauty of the psychedelic in the
and
anywhere really.
It's funny, we were talking about songwriting earlier, but I had this joke that another member in the band, Big Red, makes. He says Eric writes about one song a year. And it's like you're writing tons of songs all the time, but it takes almost like the amount of like time that it takes for us to like really compile like an album's worth of material can take about that long for me to like hash out one idea to its fullest extent. And I'll write it, rewrite it like 2 or 3 different ways. And so I kept bouncing back and forth. I actually snuck that song on the album. These 2 guys had to go to work, and me and Big Red were left to record extra parts on the album, like textural synth stuff, and we did that. And I was like, we got like a few more hours. Let's just record Evening View, right? And
favorite song, the worst song in the album.
and,
Easily the worst song on the album.
And then we decided then at what style, like, do we play it in like more like active, like a little faster? Or do we do like the slower one now? It's like, I'll do the slower one to kind of like fit with the record a little bit more. I think that'd be better. So it was our fun sort of like sticking it to these guys because we hadn't really written it out that much, but I was like, we can just do this. Why not? Here we are again. I'm Eric.
I'm Jake.
I was asleep. I'm Matt.
And we are Spaceface.
He's
and
Matt.
Now you're in our van for some reason. Our friends Marilyn and Philippe put on a festival out in Montreal called Distortion Fest. They're kind of not too dissimilar from, is it Night Owl here? Yeah. They're not too dissimilar from Night Owl, but in Montreal. And they actually hit us up and like have this like government funded festival called Tavern Tour. And they book bands for that in February. I think it's like a city-sponsored event that's supposed to be like, hey, it's cold and miserable, but isn't it cool to keep living here? And they kind of use that to book you in May. So the deal is, hey, we've got this great festival in May that you can come play, but you have to come up in February too.
And then I said, wait, won't that be really cold?
And then I said, nah, dude. Yeah. And here we are. But I'm glad we did it. A lot of people, you're actually like the 3rd person that's asked me that, like, who's your booking agent? And I'm like, me.
Yeah, don't say that on camera.
They're like, I'd fire your booking agent. And you're like, not possible. I'm glad we did it, though. This is fun. I feel like we haven't been to Canada in like 2 years.
So back in October, we were able to, well, let's see, back in the spring, we went to California. We did a West Coast tour, and then we had a month and a half, 2 months maybe off. We went up to New York and back, and then we also had this sort of offer to go back and play Desert Days Festival in Joshua Tree, which was going to be in October. And we got that offer on the way back, and usually we can only get out to California one time a year, you know? And so we accepted the offer without knowing exactly how we would do it. You know, we was like
most things we do.
We rent this van. Cheers. We rent the van. This is our trailer, and so we just got to make sure that we can, like get all of our stuff together to get back out. So anyway, myself and 2 other band members, not these guys, drove from Memphis, Tennessee to LA, which is
talking about how he's awesome for driving to California without us.
So we had to do me and another member made a 16-hour round trip to go get the van that we rented from our friends back to Memphis, and the next day we hauled out of Memphis and we took a 30-hour car ride to LA. So with 3 people nonstop, drove through the night in sort of like 6-hour shifts. And so the inspiration to drive that far is like the day that you start driving, you know you're not going to make it. So you have this endurance that you can just do that. So after we made that feat, we said, well, we can just drive up to Canada and that won't be quite as long of a trip. So we're used to it. Now we can do anything in a van.
Truth. DIY. Fabulously. We have a pretty good track record with festivals. You always get nervous because we're relatively unknown and, we're usually the level we're at, you're usually booked kind of early. For me, it was just about getting the name on the poster because it's such an epic festival. I thought if we can just have our name next to all these just fabulous, like amazing musicians, I'll be happy. But we show up, and we have all that stuff, all the gear, and the stage manager's trying to talk us out of it, and we kind of like, we're really, not forceful, but kind of like, we went, trust me, we'll do it really fast, please let us do our thing. And we did it, and kind of setting up for a minute, there's about 30 people milling about, and you think, seems about right. I'm happy to be here. And then all of a sudden, like 300 people came into the tent while we were playing, and we had a big psychedelic party on our hands and played an epic show, and they gave us passes for the whole weekend, and we got to all of our girlfriends came, and a lot of our girlfriends and friends came. We rented an Airbnb and we stayed the whole weekend. Specifically, I don't like to hang out at festivals, and as we were driving in the third day, one of my friends who was with us, who drums for the Lips, he goes, I can't believe I'm heading into a festival for the third day, and I want to be there. I'm like, me either.
It was a good time.
It was wonderful.
I think
I recommend everyone go.
the best part of that festival was that, you know, you hear about festivals like Lollapalooza, and they have so many bands that you want to see, and they all play at the same time. And what really worked for bands like us, and Desert Days has a lot of bands that are kind of like, you know, kind of lower on the list. They're still trying to like make it through and stuff like that, as well as Iggy Pop, you know, and stuff like that. But no one plays over anybody. There's 4 stages, and everybody's there to see music, so you might be playing at 2 o'clock, but you're the only band playing at 2 o'clock, so people are going to see you. It was really well done.
They do a really wonderful job. Shout out Desert Days, you beautiful, beautiful people.
It's like
we
walking
love you
through an alien marketplace planet. It's so surreal. It's very. It's like
It's a labor of love. They really knock it out of the park. I can't wait to go next year.
yeah. Invite us back.
My friend, he goes by Vinyl Williams, is his moniker. His name is Lionel. He just does that. And once I moved out to LA, I ended up hanging out with him and a lot of other folks in this DIY venue called Non Plus Ultra. Shout out Non Plus Ultra. You guys are also beautiful and amazing people. And at some point, he and I were just hanging out, and he goes, I've got this heavenly 360 video I've been making, and I really just want, you know, something that has like ethereal vocals and gratuitous harps. And I said, oh, interesting. We have a song with ethereal vocals and gratuitous harps. You should check it out. And he goes, yeah, cool. And I sent him the song, and it was not like 2 weeks later, it was done. And after that, he and I worked on doing the, I don't know if you've been to our website, but we have the whole like 360 remix sort of experience that are shots from that song. And he was doing this thing where within these frames, you can be like, that's the shaker, that's the main vocal, that's the drum, and you get to kind of live in this space, and you're remixing it as you're moving around, so you're kind of deciding what you want to hear. It's a trip. But that was all Vinyl Williams.
Staying together as a band. Just kidding. The biggest accomplishment? Being here in Canada with you guys. Duh.
Yeah, people asking us to come.
I mean, no, but like for real though, like it's, you know, it's such a slog sometimes, and you play we're looking at it and it's like, oh, we have to play these 5 shows in a row, but then as soon as you do it, and as soon as you get here and you see people, you're like, I get to do this. You know what I mean? Like I get to see all these people, and they're here for us, and it's really fucking. I mean, it's beautiful. It's crazy. It's insane, and we're not worthy of people coming out. You know, some people drove like 3 hours to be at our show last night, and it's like, I'm the dork that drives 3 hours to be places. You know, like this is weird. I don't know.
So yeah, being asked to come play at a festival and to make it out is really awesome. And on top of that, the icing on the cake, when you get to see not only friends that are in bands that you play with, but friends that live out, in the country when you drive across, and friends that you like have lived with in Memphis and known for years, and now they live like scattered across the country, and you get to go hang out with them, and like they oftentimes like put us up, and like we slug into their apartment at like 3 o'clock in the morning, but they're like super happy to hang out and like catch up and everything, and that's really, really awesome. But the bands that you become friends with, last night we got to play with a band, Wizard, and they're from Montreal, and they're this awesome French Canadian, like funk psych, groovy band, and we played with them last year, 2 years ago in Montreal as well, and we really hit it off, and we loved their sound. Watching them was amazing, and and we stayed in touch. They've actually done a remix to our song Cowboy Lightning, which is Timeshare, not my bad. But they just are awesome people in general. So the first time we got to hang out with them, we just sort of like were meeting each other. This time we were actually like hanging out and like catching up and like really getting to know them more. And to do that, I mean, there's more than a handful of bands that are like that we know and that you get to see and catch up with and grow with as a band. So it's really awesome. Oh, well, yeah, the rainbow.
It'd be kaleidoscopic for sure. It'd be a opalescent color.
Pale
For
white,
sure.
Really boring. Pale white, beige.
I think we go for it. I mean,
I want each album to be its own color scheme.
Color Music did that.
Oh, well.
I mean, that was they obviously called it orange and pink and whatnot, but
So like the earthy. I mean, the cover, the album art
is green
and yellow, and they're earthy tones. They're like it's like grassy. It's sky blue.
Yeah, I think the color comes into every aspect of the song. There's like, especially with tying into the visuals now, because it's all sound reactive. So you'll find it just changes the conversation. Often you'll be playing something and somebody goes like, yeah, just like the song just feels more pink and blue to me than it feels red and orange, and you go, okay, you think about that and it starts to, I know, I think we try to encapsulate all the colors, but yeah, this one for sure I think was more earthy, like green and browns and blues of water.
Watching the show, you might find that you can never like feel what the audience will feel, right? So listening to the album and experiencing it live I almost 100% feel like will be different, right? Like way more in your face live, like loud, full, not, it's not going to just like be discernible, but I think there's way more energy in like the performance, and then on the album feels like this sort of like what we're talking about, like headphone music, like an experimental yet grounded in pop contemporary music.
I kind of look at it like a person. Like the album is a snapshot of us right then, and then you talk to them live or you go see them live, and then it's the whole human. Like then you get to know all the weird fucked up shit somebody did when they were 17.
We catfish everyone. Catfish.
I'd say opalescent. Is that a cop out? Yeah, that's a cop out. Hooray!
Oh, great!
Hooray!
Thank you very much
Thank you
for
guys.
having us, and for us having you.
Yes.
In the van.
In the van.
How many van interviews have you done?
0.
Tight.
This is the first?
Yeah.